going to talk about how we gather samples from a population in order to do a statistical study. So first of all, sampling is where you select members of the population. And that's for a study. Okay, so some statistical question we want to answer, we're going to take members of the population and we're going to find out that information by selecting a sample from the population. Now, avoid bias by carefully selecting a method. You can oftentimes misrepresent the population by how you select the data, the people to be sampled in this, or the things to be sampled. So be very careful to try to select a good method of sampling so that you can reduce the bias in your statistical study. So stratified sampling is where you're going to divide the groups into groups with similar characteristics. So an example of that would be you might separate by age. You might stratify it so that all the ages are represented in the different groups. And then you go to each group that you've stratified and sample from those. So in each group, conduct a random sample. This ensures that every group is represented in this study. So an example, like I mentioned, would be separate by age. Now the next one, cluster sampling. This is where you just find a convenient cluster of a sample together. So in a school that might be classes, in sports, it might be teams. So find a convenient cluster or a convenient way to cluster. The population. And then what you want to do is select a cluster at random. So if you're doing classrooms in a school, for instance, you might just pick several classrooms and then find the data in that classroom. All right, so we'll use that as our example. Select random classrooms. In a school. But you do have to select those clusters at random, otherwise, again, you might be inserting some bias into it. All right, systemic sampling. This one is where, for instance, you would start with a list of items or people, and you just start at a certain place. So you just say, I'm going to start maybe at the fifth one in the line, and then go with every third person after that and gather the data from that. So select with a random member of the population. Start with a random member. So find that first spot to start, and then use a rule to come up with how you're going to select more members. So as an example, start with the fifth person and select every third person after that. Okay, so that's systemic sampling. Now these last two we got to be very careful with, because both of these two can insert a high level of bias into it. These are at high risk of bias. So put that here just so that you know these are not good if you're hoping to avoid bias, which is what we typically do. We want to avoid bias, so these are not the best ones to choose. But these are easy ones that people often use to gather data quickly and easily. So convenience sampling would be if you just choose members of the population that are close to you. Okay, so for instance, in close proximity might be, you might just say, okay, I'm gonna go survey my neighbors, the people around me. Again, why that could be high source of bias is you probably live around people that are friends or have similar views or similar maybe socioeconomic relationship to each other. So you want to make sure you avoid bias by going out from just a convenient way of finding people to survey or to sample. Self-selected sampling, this is where you ask for volunteers from the population. Now this one would involve bias because if you think about it, if people volunteer, they might have maybe some internal need to share their opinion or to get involved. Maybe they're upset about something. So because they're very involved or very engaged, that might again involve some bias. So these are the ways that we would typically sample to find out data in order to answer a statistical question. Make sure you try to pick the one that not only is doable for your research or your the research question that you're doing, but also make sure you pick one that lowers the amount of bias in the problem.